welcome to It's a Woman's World. My name is Barbara Lavalure, and I'll be your host today. I'm so excited to have a very interesting guest with us today, Emeri Burks. And I'd love to introduce my co-hosts, Nadia.
I'm Nadia Jordana, and I'm excited to meet and get to know Emeri Burks today.
How about you, Susan?
Yeah, I feel as Nadia does, but in reading Emery's CV, she does some of the things that I've done during my career too. So I'm interested to see what topics and exactly what she did in training and development.
Thank you, Susan. And I'm Barbara Lavalure. I'm a retired international photojournalist. I usually say refired. Anyway, Emeri, when I first spoke with you and asked if you would be willing to be a guest on It's a Woman's World, I explained that the show is about successful women all over the world. And given that you're a world traveler and have spent 10 years, I believe, in China, and I think you're a successful woman. You kind of laughed and said, well, we may have to redefine the word successful. I do believe you're a successful woman and would love to hear a little bit about you, and then we'll go around and ask you questions.
Okay, got it. Well, hi, my name is Emeri Burks. I live in Long Beach, California, and I work out of Torrance right now as a program coordinator for an after-school Chinese program. We work with K through fifth grade, and I also teach preschool as well. So I coordinate the pickups and going-ons of our after-school program, and we do everything from practice traditional Chinese music and prepare full musical productions to teaching hardcore Chinese. And so that's a very different picture from where I would have thought I would be 10 years ago, but it's a great fit for me right now. Yeah.
Thank you, Emeri. And where were you 10 years ago?
Yes, I spent 10 years in southern China in Guangzhou. I moved there in 2008 and moved back to the US in 2018. I figured I'd be there originally for 2 years before moving on to Japan for 2 years, and then I'd be back to New York to go pursue a career as the next Kofi Annan at the UN. And somewhere along the line, life happened and plans changed. So, yeah.
Interesting. Nadia, you had a question.
Yes, I'm interested in because I have a lot of different definitions of success along the way, and it's changed for me. How has your definition of success changed at different stages throughout your career?
Sure. Yeah. Well, when I was going to school in Boston, I was studying international relations, and I had a very rosy 1990s international relations style picture of success. That's why I was so focused on the UN at that time. I believed in international cooperation and pursuing human rights around the world, and I still believe in that. I just have perhaps become a little bit more jaded, I'll say, in just watching how international relations work. It's not about best intentions or about people having their heart in the right place, but overcoming all of the obstacles in the way. So, since then, I have pursued a good career as a teacher trainer in Guangzhou. I was training teachers for a good 7 years and was living well, was traveling all around the world in Southeast Asia, and was living a really great life. However, I was not pursuing my major passions of writing and sharing meaningful truth. I wasn't able to marry the woman that I was engaged to at the time, and I wasn't able to be around my family. In truth, I love China and it's a home to me, but it is a hard place to feel like home as an outsider, as a foreigner. And so I needed to pursue a vision of success that was more in touch with my own values. And that meant changing industry several times, starting over, tightening my belts financially month to month. And in the process, I came to find what was and actually wasn't important for me in my work. And it turns out that the people that I work with, the incremental contributions that I make with my time, that those are really critical for me in my definition of success.
Well, you sure sound successful to me, I tell you. I think it would be wonderful to be able to live in a country for 10 years. Um, Now, in China, they have several different, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to say languages, but that's not quite the word, dialects or something like that. So, how did you know which one to learn, or did you learn all of them, or how did that work for you?
Oh, I wish I could learn them all. I was lucky enough to have a Mandarin program in my high school that I studied with, and liked it so much. I kept studying it all the way through college and liked the language so much that I learned more and more about the culture, the history, the economics, the literature, the people, sociology, until basically I was just a China fanatic. And it was kind of, it was good momentum to just keep going on to China. So it was really a love of the culture that pushed me in the direction. And so I had learned Mandarin, although in Guangzhou, the primary dialect that they speak there is Cantonese, which I speak some baby Cantonese, as long as I can really quickly change to Mandarin again in the conversations down there. But you're right, China has more than 50 minorities, many different dialects. In a big city like Guangzhou, you'll hear a good 15 to 20 of them. And it can be challenging, but it makes it a lot more interesting talking to people, because where you're from and what culture you're a part of is much more immediate and present in the conversation. So you feel more connected with people's background as well.
I would think you would, yeah.
Thank you. You know, I know that you have a master's in journalism from Missouri, a really great school. The job that you're doing now doesn't occur to me as journalistic. I'm wondering, according to your website, you do a lot of blogging and writing still. Is that accurate, or let us know about some of your journalistic endeavors?
For sure. My passion for writing has been consistent since I was in really fourth grade. I have really passionately loved the written word. I think that it's one of the most effective ways to broaden mindsets and to share wisdom, experience, and knowledge. And that's still very much a part of my passion right now. I will say that when I first moved to Los Angeles, I did run into some hiccups, as some people do in the industry. We had some office politics, which were not so pleasant, I'll admit, but left me unexpectedly unemployed. And at that point, there was a need to find what my most profitable and marketable skills on my resume were. And it turned out that that was Chinese. And that's not to say that I'm stepping away from journalism. I definitely am pursuing it long term. But at the same time, I'm also pursuing something that's more immediate to me, which is the need for kindness, the need for, as well, perhaps it doesn't sound silly to you, but the love that I need to see present in my workplace to feel happy and fully expressed at this point in time. So this place is right for me right now. I'm very happy as a program coordinator, but I also look forward to continuing a career in journalism and sharing meaningful truth with a broader world about the broader world.
Emeri, I did take a peek at your resume before we came on the program, and something I noticed, something that I'm interested in, I don't know enough to say how well I'm interested in it, but generative AI was a field you were involved in 1 or 2 years ago. And my question is, because of the way, again, I'm not as knowledgeable as I should be to ask the right question, but in the way it has been exploding into our culture and our business world, and in a lot of ways, AI is just what we're calling it now. It's been there all along. But in what ways, now that you've moved on to some different career paths. How does that follow you? Because it seems to me it's part of our everyday life and would be continued on.
No, absolutely. I'm really grateful for the time that I had working at a news agency based out of Santa Monica that was very, very tightly connected to the news of Silicon Valley and business and technology. So I had the privilege of researching in depth a lot of the initial developments in generative AI with OpenAI and a lot of the other companies that really started what we know of as generative AI right now. And so I was pretty close to the ground floor and seeing how disruptive this technology could be, how scary it can seemingly be at times, and all of the use that it can have at the same time. I would have conversations with my supervisor at times where she would actually ask me to argue why she shouldn't replace me with generative AI. And that's a very powerful thoughts experiment to find my value as a person and be able to voice that. And it's something that I think all of us should get used to arguing these days, because there's more and more that generative AI can do. I mean, now in my current work, I use generative AI to help develop long-term lesson plans, to produce in-depth curriculum for several months at a time, but also to produce quick communications on the fly. There's so much that it can be used for now, and we will be using it increasingly. So it's exciting. I will admit it's a little bit scary watching, especially as the journalism industry has been suffering for a long while with the advent of social media already. But as more and more technology and infrastructure starts to perhaps replace might be a strong word, but at least to supplement the writing and the content production that we make in industries all over. This is going to be a major world changer in all of our careers, regardless of whether you're writing or doing something else, because regardless of what you're doing, you can be doing it faster, more easily, more effectively, and probably with less people, less actual workers at your company. And that by itself really does force us to take pause about what our value is as individuals, what we offer and what can't be replaced, because we need to specialize there.
Yeah, I read your resume as well, and I'm wondering, I don't like to write. I've done a lot of writing. Oh, I like it when it's done. Then I think, oh, good, I love that. But no, I don't like writing. But my dissertation for my doctorate was 450 pages, and I thought I'm never doing that again. So I admire you that you like to write. When you write and when you are interfacing with your children and probably your peers, are you always using Chinese, or are you also, is there some reciprocity there where you're using Chinese, but you're also speaking English for them to learn English as well? I would think that would be very confusing. And does it make a difference if you're speaking to the kids compared to the adults in terms of using Spanish based on English?
Right, right. No, this can be a tough question. I use Chinese as much as I can at my work, which tends to mean most of the day-to-day operations, welcoming children, bringing them to class, giving them resources that they might need, coordinating with teachers as we need. Of course, my English is much better than my Chinese, and so when there are important communications with teachers, students, or parents, I will switch to English as needed. But we do strive for 90% Chinese environment at our after-school program. And so I try to meet that. But say, for example, in my young teen class, where I'm developing several students to practice the Chinese dulcimer, a stringed instrument that uses mallets to make music. In there, we are using largely Chinese terminology, Chinese start, stop, conducting language, But in my English class, that's part of the preschool preparedness program, I'm teaching at a different location. This is 100% in English, and I need to make clear that they're going to start speaking English with me and then start speaking Chinese when they leave me, because this is an all Chinese environment. They're only speaking English in that English class. So we do need to make the boundaries pretty clear. And so when a parent comes to me and starts speaking English, I'll speak English back. Chinese, I'll do the
Excuse me,
same.
is that
Sorry, go ahead.
frustrating then to have those two languages, especially with the little ones?
It can be, but I'll say that with the day-to-day communications, it's no problem switching between English and Chinese for the more basic communications. When we're talking about in-depth requirements and objectives for a course with certain teaching methodologies, switching between English and Chinese can be very challenging for me, and it's a wonderful practice for my Chinese to be able to do that. But it does make my head hurt sometimes, and I need to remember what language I'm in at that moment and where I'm going and what specific nuance I need to express and find the appropriate language for it as best I can.
You know, it's interesting because I spent 20 years in Europe and most of that time was in Germany. And I started thinking and even dreaming in German. I was really quite
Oh.
miffed about that and worked as a journalist for 7 German newspapers when I was
Oh, wow.
the last few years. I'd like to go back to the success topic for just a moment and ask you, how does our socialization give us limiting images of success? How would you approach that question?
Sure, sure. Well, in the time that I've been alive, I've lived in Colorado, Missouri, Minnesota, Massachusetts, southern China, and west, and California, Southern California. And in each of these different places, I've seen local cultures which really, really closely define what we are telling our children and all of our citizens what they should be desiring for themselves. So when I was living in Jefferson City, for example, we had a very American dream sort of picture in a stereotypical sense, as a socialized male, I'm a trans woman, but as a socialized male, I was taught that I needed to passionately love football and need to live and breathe football. I needed to be strong and have no friends that were girls because they have cooties. And but I'd also learned interesting things like in first grade, apparently, my parents tell me that I came home one day and said that there was a new student who'd come to school that day. This was a Black student in a predominantly white school that I was going to. And I had learned very explicitly from the students that I was not allowed to play with him because he was from the other side of this one street, which was code word for he was from the poor side of town. And so, in a very explicit way, I was told what I should and shouldn't do with my time and with my friendship connections. I mean, cross that over to Minnesota. In high school, I came out as bi just because everyone else was, honestly. I later figured out my own sexuality and gender more personally, but as a child, you have to respond to what other people are telling you. You have no one's dreams but the ones that people are giving you to have for yourself. It wasn't really until late high school and into college where I started to realize that self-expression and being unabashedly who I am is truly a life or death matter for me, that it forced me to start shedding those. Then as I went to China, that was the most dramatic moment where I could see just how weird Americans are, how weird our specific worldview and the specific goals and norms that we have for ourselves are. And as the normalcy was replaced with reality, I was a lot more able to pick and choose which values and standards that I should abide by for my own reasons. And so it takes a lot. It takes a lot to peel away the socialization that we're given since birth about who we should be, what we should want, where we should go. And those are more a factor of where we are than who we are. And it takes a lot to separate the two.
It must be quite challenging in that respect. Have you been able to maintain a core group of family and or friends that, because everybody needs a core group of people who support them and their wins and their losses and the things we go through. Life is challenging no matter what.
Oh, for sure. And I'm very blessed to have a family that I love and that I think are genuinely just a really cool group of people. You know, my family is big and diverse, and there are all sorts of people in there as well. But family has been where I found community and solace, and I found multiple families. I had a family that I really loved and was very close to in China that was predominantly the expat community, a group of international people who had traveled away from their homeland, wherever it was, in search for something else, who were remarkably creative, worldly, generally kind and compassionate, very conscientious, and respectful by and large. I mean, granted, world's a big place and there are lots of different people in it, but whether it's friends from school, family at home, family abroad, they've been essential. I don't think I could live without the people in my life. That said, I am also aware that as I grow older, people drift further and further apart. People do die. It's harder as we get older to make and keep friendships. And so, especially since the pandemic, it's become extra clear to me that I need to work my butt off to make and keep those friendships, not just because they're good to have, but because they're essential for self-regulation and pursuing my own goals.
You had mentioned two words, but they're encompassing very powerful feelings that we don't often hear in a workplace. I would think you'd hear it more dealing with children, at least in the US, and that was kindness and love. When I think about that, I do work in civil rights, and I was teaching high school kids, and then I just taught adults, but some of them would just go, "What? Love, kindness? You're talking here, we're all adults." And when I talk to them about what are the values in their organization, there are several organizations where love and kindness are part of their guiding principles. And I throw those up on the screen for them to see that and challenge them. Would this be something that you would be willing to add not only to your values, but then put it in some objective form? How are you going to demonstrate this? How will you show people love? How are you going to be happy? It's such a foreign feeling for them because they're not used to that in the workplace. Did you find that in China? Were they more willing to embrace love and kindness, I'm going to say, in the workplace?
That's a tough one to answer, and it's a mixed answer that I would give. In some ways, yes, absolutely. In the education field in general, you'll find people who gravitate towards it in search of contributions, in search of finding a way to make a difference for other people. And so by that nature alone, if you're in education, you will find yourself more surrounded by people who desire good things for others, who are motivated to bring good things to others and themselves as a result of it. That said, it does need to be said. I'll wait for the siren, excuse me. Sorry about that.
We
Okay.
can't hear it.
Oh, well, never mind then.
Yeah.
That said, it does need to be said that professionally in China, finding kindness and love at work could at times be challenging. Consider, for example, that as a teacher trainer, welcoming new teachers to the country, I was responsible primarily, well, not primarily, for more than anyone else at my organization, I was responsible for making sure that the new teachers understood the rules of conduct in China. And that meant what topics we could and couldn't discuss, how we should and shouldn't interact with our children, what policies we needed to stand firmly behind and not. And sometimes there wasn't a lot of room for kindness and love in that aspect of the job. But that said, kindness and love I find in all fields with all people all the time. It's all about being present and connected to who people are, where they are, and where we're meeting on that space. Today
think-
in oh, go ahead, please.
I was gonna say, and I think who we are as a person and our ability to facilitate love and kindness in others, to recognize it, to appreciate it, to compliment when we see it, especially I guess with kids. I just don't hear it spoken of very much, which is too bad.
I agree. I agree. I've heard some really compelling research to say that as the American education system moved away from the more religious background, that a lot of what started to become missing in modern mainstream education was the moral aspect of the education, training young people to be good people, I think has become less of a priority in recent years and more about meeting certain state standards for education. Whereas now, when I'm working with children, they get upset, they cry, they get angry, and they have even their parents and other teachers telling them that what they're doing, the way they feel is wrong. And I work very hard to make sure they know that feelings are never wrong by themselves. Feelings are always valid, are always important. And it's essential to honor those feelings, to recognize where they come from, and then learn to manage them towards a goal that is what you are wanting as a person. So that aspect I wish was more integrated in mainstream education these days, to be honest.
Thank you, Emeri. I hate to say it, but we're coming to the end of our time.
Oh.
It always goes so quickly, and I have, probably 100 more questions I could ask you, and I'm sure Susan and Nadia are the same. But we really want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and sharing a little piece of your life with us. And we certainly want our viewers to enjoy our programs. It's a woman's world. We have a great time looking at and talking with and asking questions of successful women around the world. And Emeri Burks, you fit that category. Thank you so much for being with us. And thank you, Nadia, and thank you, Susan. And
Thank you.
It's